going to win your matric final exams and get those A's all the way through. And then, guys and girls, a reminder, please don't forget to download your Tenfold Education app. It's got maths, it's got science, it's got life sciences, it's got a tutor function. You can send your questions in via the tutor function. Man, you can live stream, you can do just about anything on that app, and it's all free and brought to you by Liberty as well. I mean, how awesome. And what more could you ask for? Then, well, of course, let me tell you, we've got our WhatsApp number, our little bot called Dex, and you can send your questions in as well. But please make sure that the questions are flat when you, and then take a good photo of them. Check your photos, because if they're not so great, we can't use them. And unfortunately, there were a couple of photos that learners sent in today, and they just, the quality isn't good enough for us to be able to use on the screen. So please, please, please send in good photos, okay? Take care when you take those photos. Pretend you're a photographer. And then, guys and girls, you can also go to YouTube and go to @MindsetLearn, and you can re-watch all the videos of the programs that we do here. So they're there for you. You don't have any excuses not to absolutely slay those exams. Now, for the quote of the day. The Life Sciences quote is, "Education is the passport to the future. For tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." And I know that the road ahead seems long and arduous. You've got a 10-day break. It should be a 10-day break. It's going to be a no break, apparently, but doesn't matter. You've got till the end of this year. Your exams start late October, and people, that is it. It's like that, preparing for the Olympics. And I think it's actually the middle of October. From the middle of October to the end of November, those are the Olympic races that you're going to be taking part in. And we want you all to come back with gold medals, okay? Whatever you put in now is going to be what you are going to get out of it. So don't be tempted to sit on WhatsApp or sit on your phone and social media. Don't be tempted to play games. It's now or never. Okay, prelims is just around the corner. You're going to do your prelims. Most of you are in your prelims currently. Write your exams, and just after that, we are here and we will help you as much as we possibly can. But work for it now, all right? So, first question, I actually had a sneak peek at. It is from Tabiso. Thank you for sending this in. And the diagram below shows the reabsorption. Now, that's what's important. It's the reabsorption of salt. The minute you see reabsorption, you know that it's happening in the kidney. Because everything, all the blood goes through the kidney, and the kidney then takes the good things back by reabsorption, so that only the wastes end up leaving the body. So the reabsorption of specifically salt, which is NaCl, and then you've got the reabsorption of water. Now, the minute you see reabsorption of salt, you know that we're looking at aldosterone. That is the hormone secreted by the adrenal gland. And its job is to control the amount of salt in the body. Okay? But it doesn't do the job. It's a hormone that will stimulate the nephrons, the tubules and the nephrons of the kidney to do the job of reabsorbing salt so that it can maintain the salt balance. So let's put your salt balance in the blood, okay? And if you've ever had a bad foot cramp, you will know exactly why that salt balance is important. So to avoid getting cramps, to make sure your blood pressure is right, that aldosterone and the salt balance are imperative in your body. Okay, then with the water balance, If you don't keep enough water in your body, you won't be able to cool your body down. And what causes the water balance to be controlled? That is going to be antidiuretic hormone, and that is secreted by the pituitary gland. Okay? But the hypothalamus produces ADH and stores it in the pituitary. And then the hypothalamus will tell the pituitary, which is the master gland, when to release ADH. So ADH is secreted by the pituitary gland, but it is produced by the hypothalamus. Clever, hey? Our bodies are amazing. So here we go. So we're looking at the reabsorption of salt and water, and you should be doing this in the exam too, exactly what I'm doing here, underlining words, writing in little hints for yourself so that you don't forget. Okay, under 3 different conditions. The width of the arrows represents the amounts of salt and water. So let's have a look. This is an awesome question. So we look at diagram 1. And people in an exam, you will do this. You should do exactly what I'm doing here. So in diagram 1, we've got our glomerular filtrate with the salt and the water, and you would have done this in grade 11 anyway. So here it comes into the tubules. So now what's the tubules' job? Is reabsorption. So if you look here, you've got an equal amount of salt and water being absorbed, because, let's just check which one. Okay, so white is salt and the gray one is water. So here's your salt, and here's your water, and it looks like it's even Stevens, and you've got the rest leaving via the urinary bladder, and this is going to be excreted. Okay, so I think this one shows normal. And what I base it on is that the salt and the water levels are not different. Okay, so everything's okay, the body working nicely. In diagram 2, what do we have? Wow, we have got a lot of salt. So here we've got more salt is being reabsorbed. So what would cause more salt to be reabsorbed? It would be more aldosterone. Hey. Okay, and that more aldosterone will cause the reabsorption of more salt. All right, and here we're going to have less water. Less water compared to number 1. So therefore, we are going to need, if there's less water being reabsorbed, then there's going to be less antidiuretic hormone. So therefore, we are going to end up with lots of water in the urine. So you see what you're looking at. And everything I'm writing here is going to help you to be able to answer your questions. We also here, because of more aldosterone, is going to cause more reabsorption of salt by the tubules, and therefore you're going to have less salt in the urine. Okay? If we look at diagram 3, what do we have? We've got, oopsie, less salt. So therefore, and I'm going in this direction, we are going to have less aldosterone. Remember, more aldosterone, more salt reabsorbed. Less aldosterone, less salt will be reabsorbed back into the blood. And what do we have here? Water. Well, look how large this arrow is. So we're going to have more water being reabsorbed. Therefore, we have more antidiuretic hormone. Diuretic means to wee. So antidiuretic hormone, and therefore we are going to end up with less water in the blood. In the urine. Why? Because we want to make more sweat. And why would we want to make more sweat? Because it is hot and we need to cool the body down. That's when we want more water. Less water, well, that would be when it is cold. So diagram 2 is probably when it is cold, and diagram 3 is probably when it is hot. Now that we know what's going on in the diagram, now we look at what the question is asking. So let's have a check. It says, name the hormone in the human body that is responsible for containing the water content. Well, that's easy. It's anti-diuretic hormone. And you can write it out, but why not just use ADH? Because ADH is short, sweet, and you can't make spelling errors. Salt, what controls salt? I've already told you if you didn't know. Aldosterone. More ADH, more water is kept in the body. Less ADH, less water is kept in the body, and you have more dilute urine. Salt content, more aldosterone, more salt is reabsorbed. Less aldosterone, less salt is reabsorbed. Okay, so name the gland that secretes the hormone in B. What secretes aldosterone? It is the adrenal gland. And the adrenal gland, if there's the kidney, it's added to the renal, so it sits on top of the kidney like that. And the adrenal gland secretes aldosterone and adrenaline. I mean, it's on the adrenal gland, so adrenaline, and that is your fight or flight, or in some cases both, hormone. All right, but what gland? It's the adrenal gland secretes aldosterone. Okay, then which diagram, 1, 2, or 3, would represent a person who has eaten salty chips? In other words, they're going to have lots of extra salt on a hot day, which means they are going to need, so lots of extra salt means that we're going to have less aldosterone, because we want to keep less salt in the body, and a hot day means we need more ADH. Why? So that we have more water reabsorbed. Okay? Without the intake of water means we're really going to have to work hard to keep that water in our bodies. So, which diagram? We go back here. So which diagram is going to make sure that we keep lots of water in the body? So there's the water, because we know the first one's normal. Here, less water is being reabsorbed. Here, lots of water is being reabsorbed, and more salt is going out. It means it is diagram 3. All right, now, which diagram, 1, 2, 3, would represent a person who had eaten salty chips on a hot day without the intake of water? And that is the question we have just done. Okay, I know that they will probably have asked here to explain why you said diagram 3. Okay, and I think whoever did put the questions on the Wacom actually made a small little error there. So let's look at, because there's no way an exam would stop there. So if we're going to say that question 4 is to explain your answer to question, whatever the question was, 3.1.3. Why did you say that? This is what you would say. Now remember, if we go back to this, to our diagram here, we can either explain that it's a hot day because we talk about the ADH and the water, or we could talk about the ADH and the salt. It would depend on how much this question was for. So let's say this question was, I don't know, 4 marks, then we would only explain one of them. If this question was for 6 to 8 marks, then we'd need to explain both. So let's look at what we say here. We'll say the salt content. Okay, so remember the person has eaten chips, hey? The salt content of the blood will be, and I'm not sure why this pen is doing this, be high. Okay? Therefore, less no, what's going on with my pen? Aldosterone will be secreted by the, okay, this is not working, guys. I think, all right, let me just explain it to you. All right, just have a look here, because there's something's going bummy with my pen. So after this, we'll take a quick ad break so we can figure out what's going on. But okay, so let me explain this to you. When the salt content is very high, in other words, like this person, they've eaten a packet of salty chips, okay? You've increased your salt level in your blood because it gets absorbed into your blood. It goes through the blood, it goes through the kidneys, it goes through the filtrate, okay? Because the salt content is high, okay, it's going to stimulate the kidneys to release less aldosterone. Because less aldosterone will mean that the tubules will reabsorb less salt back into the blood. So what happens then? Less salt is reabsorbed. So the salt in the urine will be higher and it will be excreted from the body. That would have been 4 marks. If you had to explain the salt, at least the diagram 3, and why it was diagram 3, then you would say it was a hot day, so therefore the water content was lower than normal because you're sweating. So the pituitary gland would be stimulated to release more antidiuretic hormone into the blood. The antidiuretic hormone would travel to where? To the renal tubules of the kidney, and it would cause them to be more permeable to water. Therefore, more water would be reabsorbed back into the blood and the urine would become more concentrated. End of story. Thank you for coming. Remember your hormones. When your hormones never do anything, they can only ever stimulate or inhibit organs, target organs, to perform a function. So if you look at an endocrine gland, it is ductless. Therefore, it secretes a hormone, which is a chemical messenger made of protein, directly into the blood. And in the blood transports that hormone to a specific target organ. So if you think about the thyroid and thyroid stimulating hormone from the pituitary, that thyroid stimulating hormone doesn't work on anything else. It only works on the thyroid. Okay? ADH works on the kidneys. Aldosterone works on the kidneys, but you've got hormones like adrenaline, which works on a whole bunch of organs. So it'll have many target organs. Insulin and glucagon work on the liver and the muscle cells. Those are their target organs. So when there is more of the hormone, it will stimulate, and then you will have more of whatever duty it must be performed by the target organ. When there is less of the hormone, then the target organ will perform less of that duty. Okay, so in the case of the kidneys, more aldosterone, more reabsorption of salt. Less aldosterone, less reabsorption of salt. More ADH, more reabsorption of water. Less ADH, less reabsorption of water. And always remember, ADH is an anti-weeing hormone. It doesn't want you to lose your water out of your body. Okay? It wants to keep the water inside your body. So you can use it to cool your body down. So therefore, on a hot day, you will have lots of ADH, so you can keep your water so that you can use it to cool the body down instead of making urine. Okay, there you go. We're going to go for a quick ad break, and I'll see you all when I've got hopefully my bends sorted. See you in a minute.
Did you know that the type of music you listen to affects your cardiovascular system? Researchers from Pavia University in Italy found that music with quicker tempos made people breathe faster and increase their heart rate and blood pressure. Slow and soft music, on the other hand, had the opposite effect and lowered heart rate and blood pressure.
No one ever asks why we do the weird things we do. Like, why once is never enough? Or doing 2 trips is just one too many? Why do we, before we use these, or say 5, when we mean 20? Why do we have second thoughts? And think that lift buttons make them go faster? Why don't we walk there? Cross our fingers, touch wood, and struggle to hide our true feelings? At Liberty, we want to know all the weird and wonderful things that make us human. Because human beings, being human, are what we make financial solutions for. Liberty, in it with you.
Did you know that crocodiles will swallow stones to assist digestion? Crocodiles will sometimes swallow stones to assist with digestion, as having stones in their stomach helps to crush and grate their food. This is particularly useful as crocodiles tend to consume their prey whole. A swallowed stone is called a gastrolith, and they may remain in the crocodile's stomach for years.
Becky to the rescue. Hi, guys. First of all, he's helped me to fix this pen. Let's hope it's fixed. But anyway, welcome back. Big shout out to Liberty. They're in it with you, and they're in it for the long haul. And then, guys, don't forget your Tenfold Education app. It's got a tutor function. It's got lessons. It's got, you can live stream. It's got everything you need, also brought to you by Liberty. And then, don't forget the WhatsApp number. Our little bot Dex is waiting for your questions. Send them in. Next week, by the way, we are going to be doing homeostasis, and we are going to be doing plant hormones. So send your questions in, okay? So we've got them, so we can check them and we can put them on. And then, last but not least, is the YouTube channel at Mindset Learn. You can get whatever you need from all the lessons that we have done here for you, by us, specially brought to you by Liberty. Okay, now let's look at question 2. We've got Majizu sent this in. So here we go. Let me just get my pen and let's go with green. All right. So the sketch below, and this is what you will always do when you get to your exams. The sketch below is a diagrammic representation of the skin showing a transverse section, means it cut through the blood vessels under different environmental conditions. In other words, one is hot and one is cold. Have a look here. First thing you know, that when the blood vessels are large like this and they are close to the skin, it is always going to be a hot day. And when they are small like this and pulled away, then it is going to be a cold day. All right, that you already know. Now, this heat coming off here, that is radiation. Okay? And there's your skin surface. People, you've got to remember, your skin is the largest organ in your body. It's huge. It's big. And it's the best way to lose heat when you're hot, to feel heat coming off. You know, when you stand next to somebody, although with social distancing, it's not going to happen very soon. But, you know, even when we used to, in the old days, stand in queues and someone got close to you, you could actually, even from about 15, 20, 30 centimeters, you could feel their body heat. Okay, because the heat radiates off you. All right, so here's your epidermis. And then that's what rubs off and slots off. And then you've got this part here, which is the dermis, which is where our blood vessels are. Now, clearly looking at these blood vessels, you can see they are large. Okay? And so larger, and these are going to be smaller. Okay? And what makes the large blood vessels? We say they have vasodilated. So this is vasodilation. Dilation means to get big. And this would be vasoconstriction. Okay, so remember, to constrict means to go smaller. To dilate means to go big. All right, so dilate, constrict. Okay, how does all of this work? On a hot day, we want to lose heat by radiation. So the blood vessels, we have vasodilation. They are closer to the surface, so more heat radiates off. Okay, and you're going to supply the sweat glands with more sweat. Sweat glands with more blood. And because they have more blood, therefore they produce more sweat. And what happens? The sweat's here, and the sweat goes beady, 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 and the sweat evaporates. Okay, further cooling the skin down, which will then cool the blood vessels down and cool you down. Okay, on a cold day, the blood vessels pull away from the skin. And that's why if you've got a light skin, you'll see you start to look a bit purplish because the blood vessels, there's not a really great blood supply to the skin anymore. Okay, and when people get frostbite, that's when the blood vessels have all pulled away and the parts have been frozen. So, what would the environmental conditions, hot or cold, be as illustrated in A? That's all they want you to tell them, is either hot or cold. Don't say it will be a hot day in spring, blah, 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 either hot or cold. So A would be, if you've got all this heat and you've got vasodilation, it must be hot. Done and dusted. Okay, then, name the part of the brain, so it's the brain, responsible for the changes in the blood vessels of the skin as illustrated above. Well, there's only one that's going to change the blood vessels in the skin because it's involved with thermoregulation. And which organ would that be? Or which structure would that be? It is the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is responsible for osmoregulation. It's responsible for thermoregulation. It is responsible for keeping you alive. Okay, so ladies, when a guy tells you he loves you with all his heart, he doesn't really love you. But if he says to you, I love you with all my hypothalamus, then he does truly love you because your hypothalamus controls just about everything in your body. It also controls your autonomic nervous system. So let's look at this now. Describe the process that's taking place in B to maintain a constant body temperature. So let's have a look back at B. Now you've already written everything on your sheet, so you will know. B is on a cold day, okay? And what's happening here, the blood vessels, we have vasoconstriction. So this is what you are going to write. Oh, there's another question. You've already given yourself all the clues. So you say vasoconstriction of the blood vessels causes less blood flow to the skin, okay? Or let's say skin surface so we don't confuse it, to the skin surface. So therefore, less heat is lost from the blood by radiation. Okay, and just as a reminder, and that's why I'm putting it here in these brackets, if they asked you about the sweat glands, which they didn't in this question, they only asked you about the blood vessels because that's all that's drawn in the diagram. But if they refer to the blood vessels, you would say that vasoconstriction of the same thing, blood vessels causes the sweat glands to produce less sweat. Well, clearly they don't have enough blood. So sweat glands to produce less sweat. Therefore, there will be less cooling of the skin surface. So here, they wanted to know specifically what was taking place in B, and that was specifically about the blood vessels, okay, and how less heat would be lost by radiation, because that's what they show you here. But if they had have put the skin and a little thing, it did this, and then you go, it went, that's your little sweat gland, okay, and for the hot day, you would have had a little drop of water coming out of it, and on a cold day, there would have been nothing, and your blood vessels would all have been these little tiny blood vessels, boom, boom, boom. Then you would have spoken about the sweat glands. But since there are no sweat glands in this question, you wouldn't have covered them, but I've done it just so that in case they add it for your prelims or at the end of the year. Okay, describe how a constant level of thyroxine is maintained in the human blood when its level drops below normal. So they want us to now discuss negative feedback mechanism. Okay, of thyroxine. So I just want to get myself some space here. You're going to say the following. We want to know that, okay, so you start off so that you know when the thyroxine level in the blood is, now remember it's below normal. Below normal, what happens then? The pituitary gland is stimulated to secrete. Now remember it's low, so the pituitary is stimulated to secrete more thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, that's it, okay? Increased thyroid stimulating hormone, okay, what does that do? Increased thyroid stimulating hormone will stimulate or stimulates the thyroid, more thyroxine into the blood. Okay, the target organ is going to be the pituitary, the thyroid gland. So increase thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates the, oh, for heaven's sake, it's when you lose focus, stimulates the thyroid, that's its target organ, the thyroid to secrete more thyroxine. Okay? So what do we want to do? We want to maintain a constant thyroxine level in the blood. So this, we have an increase of that. Thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates the thyroid to secrete more thyroxine, and therefore the level of thyroxine will increase back to normal. Okay, so low thyroxine, okay, what happens? Pituitary stimulated, secretes more thyroid stimulating hormone. The thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates the thyroid to secrete more thyroxine. And what happens? You've now got an increase in the thyroxine level and it goes back to normal. And the same will happen, or a similar process happens when there's a decrease. I want to show you this, and if you learn this, you will be fine. You've got the pituitary gland. And this is one of the popular ones in the exams, okay? So you have your pituitary gland. And I mean, they can show it to you in a whole vastly different ways, but it's the basic principle here. And you have the thyroid. So the pituitary gland secretes more thyroid stimulating hormone. So if there's more thyroid stimulating hormone, the thyroid is going to be more stimulated. Thyroid is stimulated to secrete thyroxine. Let me put more thyroxine here. Okay. Okay, so now we have an increase of thyroxine. Remember, these are all endocrine glands. They secrete hormones directly into the blood. So increase of thyroxine in the blood. So what that does is it will inhibit the pituitary. So it inhibits the pituitary. Okay, so what happens? The pituitary now is inhibited, so it releases less thyroid stimulating hormone, which travels in the blood to the thyroid. So if there's less thyroid stimulating hormone, the thyroid is now less stimulated, so less stimulated to secrete less thyroxine. To secrete less thyroxine. Okay, so now we have a decrease in thyroxine level, or thyroxine in the blood, level in the blood, doesn't matter. And I'm just trying to quickly explain this to you. And this is going to stimulate the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is then stimulated to release more thyroid stimulating hormone. And the thyroid is more stimulated to, and then we have an increase in the thyroxine. And that increase is what is going to inhibit the pituitary. So what happens then? The pituitary is less stimulated, it's inhibited, so it releases less, and we then go the yellow cycle, green cycle, and the yellow cycle. And it does this process of 8 all day, so that you have an increase and a decrease, and an increase and a decrease, so that when you take this, there's normal every time. Okay, which is what a negative feedback mechanism is. Okay, cool. Let's move to our next question. Oh, this is from Samuel. The graph below indicates, let's use a nice light. Let's go with orange now. So thank you, Samuel, for sending this in. And we have the graph below indicates, look at it, the effect of glucose concentration on insulin production before and after a meal. And it's measured for okay, now this is important, it's a healthy person, which means this healthy person is going to produce the correct quantities of insulin, and it's over a 2.5-hour period. Okay, so let's have a look at our graph, and what can we see? We've got our heading, it says the effect of glucose consumption on the concentration of insulin over time. Okay, so here's my time. We start off at 7 and we go to 9:30. They told you it was only for 2.5 hours. And we have the concentration of glucose and insulin in the blood in milligrams per 100 milliliters. Okay, remember, whenever you are asked to draw a graph, which is not the case here, they're giving you the graph, but if you are given a table with information, and you are asked to draw a graph, they're testing your graph skills. So you must know how to draw a line graph, you must know how to do a bar graph, you must know how to do a histogram and a pie chart. So please practice those skills. You will be asked one of them and at least one of the exams. Okay, so don't forget your units every time, and here they could have put time in hours or minutes. It would have been minutes. All right, so This is, they tell you, so this is the glucose level, just in case you get confused with the lines and the dots, and this is the insulin. Okay, so what do we have? It tells you here you have it constant, that's your insulin was normal here, and here your glucose levels were normal. But your glucose levels went up at about 8 o'clock. Okay, whereas your insulin level only went up at about 8:15, which means that's when your blood sugar levels started going up here. So I'm going to just put BS and a little line up. So the blood sugar started to increase. And what does that do? Therefore, your insulin increases. Okay? Or the cells are stimulated to release it. Okay, and then what happens? Your glucose level increases, increases, and increases. This is digestion. And you're absorbing it into the blood. And it peaks here, sure, at about 8:45 over there, and then it starts to decline. It goes down. But can you see how sharply the insulin level increases along here? Okay? So now we look at our questions because we know what we're looking at. Okay, during which period of time was the person's blood glucose level constant? Well, that's not difficult. All you have to do is look here and use a ruler. So here is a piece of maths. So let's do this. Let them show my screen quickly, and you are going to measure here. So you're going to say, you put your ruler like this, and you're going to say, right, from 7 o'clock to, and you put there, to 8. So it was between 0700 and 0800. All right. Always use a ruler to read off a graph. What is the glucose level in the blood at 9? So do exactly what I've just done now. You're going to take your ruler and you're going to go to 9. And you line it up very nicely. Okay, so it's going to be, let's hope this works. There's 9. And we now do it across here. Am I right? So it's about there. This thing's slipping on the screen. Okay, so I've drawn the skew, but okay, so it should have been here. So that would be 90, 92, 94. I drew that a little bit skew, guys, sorry. It helps if you've got a ruler, not a piece of paper, a piece of maths paper. Okay, on cyclic triangles. Okay, so what is the glucose level at 9? It was, sure, a cut and paste, almost, approximately, okay, and I'm putting approximately in brackets here because I'm not very accurate. It's about 94 watt. And you must remember to use your units. So it's milligrams per 100 milliliters. So we're going to put 94 milligrams per 100 milliliters. Okay, sometimes they even give 2 marks, because they'll give you 1 for the number and 1 for the unit. So always check your marks, but even if they only give you 1, make sure you put your units in. Okay, describe the homeostatic control of blood glucose levels after eating breakfast at 8. So what happened? If we just quickly have a quick look at our graph, we can see. So the person has breakfast here. Okay, and they have breakfast at 8. So what happens? After breakfast, the blood glucose level increases. As it increases, the insulin level increases. Things happen. and the blood glucose level decreases. So let's write that out. You must know this. They love asking it in the exams, okay? So we say after breakfast, because they say after eating breakfast. So after breakfast, the blood glucose level increases, and that's important, it increases above normal. And you must say above normal because we're talking about negative feedback, all right? The beta cells of the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas are stimulated. Okay, cool. So they then secrete insulin. Okay, into where? Into the blood. Why? All endocrine glands are ductless. So what does insulin do? Insulin stimulates. Remember, hormones either stimulate or inhibit. Insulin stimulates the target organs, the liver and muscle cells, to convert glucose, because you've got too much glucose. And insulin's job is to get the liver and the muscle cells, or target organs, to convert glucose to glycogen and store it. Okay, so cool. So now the glucose can be stored as glycogen. It's osmotically inactive, so it doesn't affect the water balance. And we store it, and this causes the blood glucose level to decrease back to normal. All right, so let's recap. You have breakfast, or you have lunch, or you have supper, or you eat a chocolate and you have a fuzzy cool drink, which you shouldn't be doing anyway. It's not healthy. But you eat, okay? What happens? Into your digestive system, it gets digested and it gets absorbed, not reabsorbed. Reabsorption only happens in the kidney. It gets absorbed into the blood. So the blood glucose level increases above normal. What happens? The beta cells of the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas are stimulated. Those are the endocrine glands. And they are stimulated to secrete insulin. Insulin is then released directly into the blood because the endocrine glands are ductless. So into the blood, and it's transported to the target organs, the liver and the muscle cells. And it causes the liver and muscle cells to convert glucose to glycogen and to store it. That causes the blood level. You can't just stop there. You have to finish. This causes the blood glucose level to decrease back to normal. And we're back to normal. We always go from normal up and from normal down. Okay, always. So next one. Describe the expected changes in the insulin levels if this person was diabetic and untreated. Well, very simply, if they are diabetic and they are untreated, they don't produce insulin. So this person will not produce insulin. So insulin levels, or they'll not produce, or maybe they'll produce. It depends on if they got full-on diabetes or diabetes type 1, will not or produce some insulin. So insulin levels will not increase after a meal. And, or you could say it would remain low. But they don't tell you if this person is a diabetic type 1 or type 2. Remember, your type 2 is going to have to inject themselves. So your diabetes, insulin just doesn't work. Okay, that's it. People, you've got to know homeostasis. It's what this body is about. Your hypothalamus controls pretty much everything in your body. If you're looking at thermoregulation, which involves your hormones, your antidiuretic hormone and your aldosterone, and you know what, to a certain degree, adrenaline as well, because adrenaline is going to affect the thyroid, which is going to affect your pancreas, which is going to affect your insulin levels. So everything in your body is integrated. It works together. And you have to learn your biology system like that, especially your paper 1 things together and your paper 2 things together, because they interlink. All right. Something else I want to please remind you about is send in your questions. You can send them in all through the week. You can send them in. Try not to send them in on a Wednesday morning, because it puts us all in a bit of a panic station here to get them loaded. But take a good photo on a flat surface. Make sure the light is right before you send it through to us. And you can either send it via Facebook page, or you can send it via our little WhatsApp bot. Okay, Dexy boy. So there you go. Have an awesome week. Take care. Look after yourself. Put in the effort and stay warm. Mwah.